Welcome all of you that are here to our virtual District Hall Lounge. I am Tuni Shartner, the Executive Director of District Hall and Venture Cafe Providence. We provide a beautiful 8,000 square foot space in the heart of the Innovation and Design District in Providence, Rhode Island. We offer a free public lounge for anyone to come work and have casual, physically distanced meetings. We also offer private meeting rooms and event space. And we run our signature Thursday Venture Cafe programming, as well as many other programs like this throughout the week. We are excited to be co-hosting this great monthly program, Israeli Game Changers, Revolutionizing the World, in partnership with one of our favorite partners, the Rhode Island Israeli Collaborative. So without further ado, Avi Neville, I will hand it over to you.
Okay. So first of all, Tuni, thank you for partnering with us, District Hall. We appreciate it. And today we have a very fascinating program. Our organization, the Rhode Island Israel Collaborative, was formed 3 years ago in order to stimulate communication and business between Rhode Island, Israel, in academia and research and business. We have a couple programs. One we have every month, and next one will be on January 12th, Little State Big Innovation. We had one yesterday where we introduced 3 Israeli startups and met some with Rhode Island companies, and hopefully they'll set home here in Rhode Island. Then next week we have an announcement. We have a program where virtual trade mission to Israel in March. So we'll have an event, and any company from Rhode Island that wants to participate, I recommend that they will participate in this event. On our program today, the next speaker, we are very happy. We'll have Kira Radinsky. As a matter of fact, she's a chairwoman of technology officer of diagnostic robotics. Rhode Island done business with her in the past, and she just was awarded the this year recipient of most disruptive woman in tech. So that's very exciting, and that will be January 20. We have a program going on with the consulate, the Hispanic community, and weeks in providing training to Hispanic students and matching them with small Hispanic businesses that don't have internet presence, and we are now recruiting students. There will be also prize money for them. So if you know any student, please let them know about it. Before I go to the program, I want to wish all those who celebrate Hanukkah tomorrow, happy Hanukkah, Chag Hanukkah Sameach, and we go to our program. So I'm very, very honored and excited for a few reasons. First of all, we have an amazing speaker today, Udi Mokady. I know Udi for many, many years. And it's just amazing to watch from the side how one person can change a whole sector of industry and bring so much change and innovation. And I think that is something that everybody should learn and listen. We have also the interviewer today is Jim Ludes, Dr. Jim Ludes from the Pell Center. And I'm so glad because Jim and I did a few projects in the past. As a matter of fact, to those who don't know, our 3 years ago when we did the blockchain event, that was in collaboration with the Pell Center with Jim Ludes and his team. And the RI Hub was at that time, the idea was formed at that time, and today, due to him helping us with the conference and his team, we have the RI Hub as a Center for Innovation in Rhode Island. So definitely, that's great. Last but not least, and you will be the first speaker for a couple minutes before Udi and Jim will take over. I'm really honored that the new Israel Consul General, Ambassador Meron Reuven, in his first engagement in Rhode Island, he just arrived a couple of weeks ago, and he served in multiple positions as ambassador served in the UN. And for me, it's an honor to welcome him to Rhode Island. Hopefully one day we'll be also able to have you in a physical visit here. So with that said, I will transfer to Meron, Ambassador Meron. Thank you. And then Jim and Udi will take over. And again, I wish everybody happy Hanukkah and thank you all for participating and for our speakers. Thank you. And Ambassador Meron, it's all yours.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much for inviting me today and allowing me the privilege of speaking, as Avi said, in my first public engagement in Rhode Island. And really thank you to Mr. Avi Neville and the Rhode Island Israel Collaborative for its tireless efforts to strengthen the ties between Rhode Island and the State of Israel. And of course, I'd like to convey my best wishes from the government of the State of Israel to the people of Rhode Island and the government. And I'm sure that I will continue the work of my predecessor, Ambassador Zev Boker, and all the other former consul generals to New England in continuing to advocate a lot of cooperation between Israel and New England. And I'm very grateful for Avi's numerous contributions that have really helped strengthen this relationship between a small country in the Middle East and a small state in the United States. Sometimes small is beautiful. You know, Israel and the United States share many common values and common concerns, and we also have a strong commitment to working together in academia, technology, economic development, medicine, national security, AI, etc., etc. And we really look to all states in the union, and small as well as big, to maintain the dreams of continuing to work together and to get to a very nice and a good level of cooperation. And as the new Consul General of Israel to New England, I'll do my best to strengthen the relationship between the state of Rhode Island and the state of Israel. And I really do hope that we will be able to see over the next few years an increase in cooperation between not only Israel and Rhode Island, but Israel and the United States, and to continue this really great collaboration and cooperation that we've had with the United States for decades. And I'm very happy that the consulate is partnering with Rhode Island and with, of course, the RIIC, and look forward to many great future collaborations. And Avi, thank you once again for inviting me. And since you're not here to hear me, but to hear the proper speakers, I will cede and once again say thank you and listen, like all of you, intently to what everybody has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Meron. We appreciate your warm words and looking forward to work with you. And now, Dr. James Ludes, please, Jim, take it over. And thank you again, Udi.
Avi, thank you. Mr. Ambassador, thank you as well. Tuni, thank you for hosting us. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jim Ludes. I am Vice President for Public Research and Initiatives at Salve Regina University and Executive Director of the university's Pell Center for International Relations and Public Policy. It's a real pleasure to be with everybody today. It's especially a pleasure to be able to spend some time with Udi Mokady. He is Chairman and CEO of CyberArk, and a pioneer in establishing the privileged access management software market. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Since co-founding the company in 1999, Udi has entrenched CyberArk as the market leader. And during his tenure, he has also served as CyberArk's chief strategist and visionary. overseeing global expansion, management execution, and corporate development. Since assuming the position of CEO in 2005, Udi's leadership and direction has been instrumental in guiding CyberArk to achieve record growth while accelerating overall market adoption for privileged access management solutions to protect against an evolving advanced threat landscape. He was elected chairman of the board in 2016. Prior to his role as CEO, Udi served as CyberArk's COO between 1999 and 2005. And during that time, he helped establish the company's headquarters in Newton, Massachusetts, and successfully transitioned the company to a market leadership position in privileged access management. Among other things, he did that by helping organizations, and I'm going to quote verbatim here. He helped organizations to recognize the connection between privileged access and advanced internal and external security threats. We're going to talk about a lot of that. We're going to talk about the cybersecurity market, and we're going to talk about CyberArk. But Udi, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jim, and great to join. And the opportunity for me to thank the ambassador and welcome him to Ambassador Minor, welcome him to New England, and hopefully we'll meet in person soon and break bread and really welcome you here. I think we have an amazing high-tech community here, and of course to thank Avi for everything he's been doing on generating business on both sides of the ocean. Just amazing stuff. But happy to be here.
Super. Well, Udi, we want to talk about CyberArk, but I'm curious, your path to this role in the company, but also just sort of how did you get into cyber more generally? What led you to this industry in particular?
Yeah, so I would say that when we founded CyberArk, cybersecurity wasn't even the terminology to describe the space. It was more information security and some digital security elements, and the world was just oriented towards bringing up perimeters, and the internet was evolving. I was exposed to computers in my service in the Israeli intelligence, and my co-founder had a similar experience on running the computer environment in the military, and we actually saw that even the military had the misconception of, nobody will ever come inside into the network. We're fine here, and just the basic notion of curiosity was happening. People were snooping over each other just to see what is going on in the computer world. When we left the military, we saw the same thing in the civilian world. Is that you can have major banks, but they had a misconception of how easy it is for an insider to wreak havoc, and we came up with the concept which actually looked at the physical world. In the physical world, we have doors and some entrance to the buildings, and then on the inside, if we have crown jewels, if we have valuables, we lock them up in a safe or a vault. And we came up with the concept of, let's do the same thing for digital world. Let's create a digital place to store our valuables. That was the concept. Then the world took us on this journey when you listen to customers, and this whole market space of privileged access evolved.
Were there specific technological barriers you had to overcome in terms of developing the solutions that are at the core of CyberArk's offerings?
Yeah. CyberArk, to create this concept, we had to what's now called deep tech, because the most of what was done at the time were either antivirus type technologies or firewall technologies, which were listening to traffic and blocking and allowing traffic in and out. When we founded CyberArk, there was another large Israeli company focused on firewalls, Check Point, which we're now proud to say we're the second largest information security company out of Israel. Check Point was focused on firewalls, and the rest of the industry was very much on antivirus. We had to create a collapse of security layers that will protect one location in the network and will make it secure even against the IT employees who are always at it and are pounding against it. So it had to be very resilient and built on multiple layers of security that include encryption, that include its own specific firewall, that include deep access control, and analytics, which of course now people call it much more artificial intelligence, but analytics around it. and then adopted to be able to serve and scale to serve banks and governments and insurance companies and manufacturing companies that they require scale and they require real time. So if we were to secure and enable access through our system, it had to be very resilient, but also fast.
So are you when CyberArk engages with a client, are you selling a service or are you selling the know-how? Or is it a combination of all of the above, or am I missing something?
Oh, no, it's absolutely a software solution, and more it's a software as a service solution. And so I'll roll back a little bit. So I described the notion of how we evolved and created this safe place to secure valuables, and that's when we started in Israel and as we embarked on the journey and I moved here and we engaged with customers, they shared with us that the most important thing they want to protect are what's called the keys to the kingdom, or these credentials that humans are using before they get strong access to the environment. So imagine a bank, and they have all the physical barriers, and they have the controls that they put on their employees. But 5 stories down, the IT employees or the developers have privileged access. They can access anything. So they can move information from bank accounts. They can close bank accounts. They can wire. Why? Because it's built this way. Humans need to administer the IT infrastructure. And so what CyberArk does, what privileged access management does is take away that power and put it in a controlled fashion so that employees can only do what they're allowed to do and that there are controls in place. So organizations can either install this security infrastructure and use CyberArk as the bridge between the humans and the information assets that they need to access. And of course, we provide full security on those sessions, or more and more in recent years consume this as a service, where actually they don't have to deal with any installation, and it's software as a service solution to enable this privileged access. I won't complicate the crowd, but the whole these credentials that power access are for anything we can envision that companies run on. But similarly, behind the scenes, computers also need these access to credentials, but they're not a human that's going to say, hey, I need this credential because I'm going to a database and I need to access this bank account. And we had to basically create another prism of our solution that serves the connection between applications and other applications and data resources, and do all of that highly secure, highly scalable, and to be able to support really very complex enterprises.
You know, we've got a total of, I think, of about 30 or 40 minutes for this conversation. I'm going to ask you a question that you might be able to take a week on. So we'll just sort of stipulate that up front. But from the moment that you had the idea and you founded the company to taking it public and then seeing it sort of achieve this global impact and global market leadership, what's that journey like as an entrepreneur, as someone who is building this business literally from the ground up? What's that journey like, and what has surprised you in that journey?
It's a little bit like climbing a mountain that nobody ever gave you a map, or you don't even know it's real height. Can you imagine that you're trekking and you're hiking, but you actually don't know what the elevations are? I can definitely tell the audience that I had more hair when we started the company, but it was worth it, and the journey was very fulfilling. I think we. You know, and Ambassador Miron will tell you, and you all know that the hills to Jerusalem are very steep. And I remember a childhood friend who was actually able to bike up the hills up to the Capitol, and we didn't have the very sophisticated gear in the bikes. And I remember asking him, "How did you do that?" And he said, "Well, to stay mentally sound, I just looked at the road below." And to make sure to stay away from the cars and just move up, not look back and not look up. I think that's kind of how we did it. We went on this journey. We knew for sure that we wanted to go after and build a global company, and that's why the presence here in New England was very important for us early on. It was not the model of most Israeli companies to move to the East Coast. Most Israeli tech went to Silicon Valley. We did not follow anybody's model. We said, where are those first key customers? And we figured financial services and Fortune 500 companies around the East Coast, this would be a great location. And then we followed the customer journey. And the more we became strategic to our customers, the more they basically begged us, hey, don't go in the general route of startups that quickly exit and leave the stage and become a feature in somebody else's solution. We want you to stay around. And we heard it enough times from major names that you all bank with or fly with or even jog with as shoes, and governments that it transformed the way we looked at the startup journey. And we said, you know what, we want to build a built to last type company. Often when I introduce CyberArk in a forum like this, I like to say Israel is known for startup nation, and I'm proud that we're one of the examples that there's more and more scale up nation coming out of Israel, where you create a true global company, employees around the world, creates hundreds of jobs here in New England as an example. And it's a different feel for the entrepreneur. I think many are missing out because they kind of take the shorter journey.
So I want to note for everybody that we're going to have some time for Q&A at the end of the session. If you've got a question that you want Udi to answer, post it into the chat section in Zoom, and we'll make sure that we get to as many of those questions as we have time for. Udi, as I listen to that, what I hear coming from you is the importance of listening to what your customers are telling you, and understanding what their needs are and meeting them in that space. Was there an aha moment, a eureka moment, where you realized that the company that you had started off, that you had these global ambitions for, was actually doing or going to do what you had set out to do?
Yeah, I think there's this very complex formula. You have to listen to your customers, but they won't be able to tell you where the puck is going, where the future is going. So there's this very unique balance. You have to think ahead of them, then listen to them and wind it back to something that they can use, and then think of them ahead of them a little bit more. In cybersecurity, it's a three-dimensional element. You have the product companies that are innovating, you have the customers that need to consume this to be more secure, and you have the very motivated hackers that don't need to report to anyone and don't need to run to run a governance sound type organization, and they are also continuously innovating, as we all see in the news every day. So you have that other dimension that also kept us very clear on that road, because you have the customer requirements, but the attackers and the hackers are innovating and they're attacking them. So that also spurts our mission and innovation. So you can't just listen to the customers, because, for example, sometimes the customers are driven by compliance. The authorities are telling them, if you're storing credit cards, you have to encrypt them and do these ABC basics. But the hackers don't care if the organization is compliant or not. They're just going to go the fastest way to steal data, and if they find ways around it, they will. And so we kept, I would say it was very important for us to always research, what are the hackers doing? How did breaches happen? How could we have helped? Then recreate that and help customers preempt that and stay ahead of the curve. And in this case, be a little bit more prescriptive to customers and not just listen. I think the aha for me is actually in the first times we did these big customer events and looking out at a crowd of customers, and then having that session where the customers come up, and it's big enterprises, big insurance companies, and they share the stories. There's a CyberArk and they tell the story of how we let them sleep better at night. They don't fully sleep at night. If you're in charge of security, you don't really fully sleep at night. But we're helping those people sleep better at night and then focus on their business.
So I'm going to sort of weave some of these questions in here, but Tuni asks, how do you actually ask those customers? Is it formal? Hey, we're trying to understand the way you do your business, or is it more just sort of by getting to know your partners and sort of being sensitive to what they're telling you?
It's a very strong. It's like a flywheel. When you begin, they have more to give you than you can give them, because you don't have all that accumulated customer experience, and it takes this humility that they can read. I think you come to these meetings and you say, this is our approach, this is how we do it. What are your problems? What are your pains? As of course the flywheel grew, and now with more than 6,000 customers around the world and half of the Fortune 500, you actually bring value to them even by the questions you provide. You come to an insurance company and you say, hey, our other insurance customers have done this, have you done that? Or they have seen these sort of attacks, have you seen that? So it's a combination of humility, but then at some point they do want us to be prescriptive to them, because this is a matter of really, I mean, we've seen businesses take a big hit, and those companies that we can really help protect it against, especially against the advanced attacks, it's a big value add for them. And so we actually coach our own employees, be prescriptive. We have a real mission. It's not just delivering software or delivering solutions. We want those customers to be more secure. So if you see them going the wrong direction, actually be prescriptive with them.
Udi, yeah, so I'm listening to you, and I'm not blowing smoke, but your mastery of not just your business, but the broad trends in the industry is really impressive. I'm curious about your personal background. You mentioned that you had served in Israeli intelligence, but did you go to school to learn business? Where did the businessman, the entrepreneur in you develop from?
The businessman was okay. It actually Ambassador Meron will like this because I grew up. You found a twist. I grew up. My dad was also served in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel. He's now retired, and so throughout my life, we were traveling the world, and you get this combination of and various roles. As Ambassador Meron will tell you, you started harder. At tougher environments before you get to, and part of my life was also here, but you get a big appreciation of the world in a way that is actually a gift to see. But the real business learning was there are a few jobs. I did do a business development job for an Israeli electronics company that was doing a lot of business in the U.S., including the U.S. government. It was delivering. Some of them were military solutions, but the real learning, and I did a master's actually at BU, but the real learning was the drive to I would say a growth mindset, to always learn, to learn from peers, to learn from partners, to learn from customers. And it was when we started the company, the information security industry, you could probably count on two hands maybe the amount of companies in there. Now it's hundreds, and so I had the opportunity to really be in the pioneering phase of an industry, and just be very curious and learn as I go, both on the technology side but also on the business.
A couple of weeks ago, the Rhode Island Israel Collaborative hosted another session with Udi Mokady, who's the author of The Unstoppable Startup. He profiled you and CyberArk in his book, and he praised your chutzpah, among other things. What do you think stood out to him?
When he wrote I think it's called it's called Mastering Israel's Rules of Chutzpah. I think a part of succeeding as a startup is you cannot follow conventional wisdom. You might as well stop short of continuing with a startup, because you're going to get so many no's, and you're going to get so many we already do that, or that it's very hard. So you have to have a very strong belief, but also in various junctions, you don't have to always turn left when you were told to turn right, because you'll get lost. But in various important junctions, you have to say, why are they telling me that I can't turn right here? I actually, I think one story I told Uri as he was writing the book, just as an example, when we were gearing up to go public in 2014, it was September of 2014, and you have the quiet time where you're gearing up and the public doesn't know yet that you're about to file an issue, and we were in New York. back in the day when people met in person, right? We were in New York, suits, getting ready to go, and then it was published that Alibaba, the Chinese e-commerce company, was also going public in the same week. The bankers from major banks who were taking CyberArk public came back kind of into the room and said, and it's very hard to find an IPO window when everything is right and you're ready to go, and we were ready to go. The bankers came back into the room and they said, we don't recommend that we go because Alibaba is going to go out and it's going to be such a big IPO. And the quote that they used, it's going to block the sun. And it was very easy to just get it as very clear advice and just say, oh, we lost the window and let's go. And we asked a few chutzpah questions. Yeah, they're a big company, but who else did a block the sun type IPO that nobody else succeeded? And they had one or two examples of GM and others. And we said, wouldn't it be the opposite? Everybody's going to be afraid to go at the same time that Alibaba is going. And we're going to be the only mid-sized company that's going to go next to a giant, and we're going to cater to different audiences. And they said, okay, if you're willing to take the risk, you have a good point there. And suddenly you see that they also started believing in this answer, and they started telling us this answer. You know what? It's actually good to go now. And it ended up being a very successful IPO, and the meetings were packed, and everybody was eager to hear the CyberArk story. So those are some of the examples of chutzpah in a good way. Just being very being resourceful and not following all advice.
Well, so CyberArk is an Israeli company. You're headquartered here outside of Boston. Why New England?
Yeah, I actually find myself as a side job marketing New England to Israelis. Very hard to market the winter. The Rhode Island winter is better, but it's very hard to market the winter. But I find it, and I think I never look back. This is what was such an important decision for us. So the biggest part, the R&D center is in the greater Tel Aviv area. It's in Israel. And we have a lot of employees in Israel and the U.S. and this new office I'm speaking from is now almost equal in size to the amount of employees we have in Israel. So it's really large. And when we were looking at early on, like I said, everybody was again not even thinking twice. Oh, high tech, Silicon Valley. And we saw that when you're in Silicon Valley, you're a 10-hour difference away from Israel, where you need to communicate and work. It's not really where the type of companies we were going after are headquartered. The financial services company at the time, we were very focused on financial services. Now we're working with multiple companies. And we had a few friends that were local here that kind of hinted that there's just great talent here, and because of the amount of universities in New England, and I think we didn't even know how good it gets in terms of the talent here. There weren't a lot of information security companies here. There was one. RSA was a private company at the time in the greater Boston area. And so we followed the customer. We followed a closer time zone, and we wanted New England versus New York because we felt it would be a place where we have a bigger shot to create a culture that people stay for a long time in the company and get high retention and I would say meaningful retention for employees. And we were right on both of those. And now a lot of companies, especially cybersecurity startups in Israel, are thinking Boston. Their only and New England, their only deterrence is the winter. And if you could do something about that, if anybody could do something about that in this forum, then we're great.
Well, you've talked, I think, someplace that I read about the decision to come to New England and the dynamics of both the workforce, the culture, the environment. I come from a university. We've got a cybersecurity program. What are the kinds of things that you're looking for in the people that you hire at CyberArk?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of let's say technology talent, go-to-market talent that we've hired here. I think in terms of studies, if it's people coming out of computer science programs, it's really we actually run them through some very interesting type of quizzes where they get a drill and they run they're supposed to find solutions on their own, and so it couples that you're academically you've learned your computer science, but that you're also thinking out of the box and are good riddle solvers, because when you're going to show up in a customer, and you can think about any major enterprise, we all know they're often a combination of 5 or 10 acquisitions from multiple over the years. Imagine some of the big retailers or the big banks, they've acquired other banks, and so when they're going to arrive there, it's going to be a puzzle. And so the ability to apply what they've learned in a resourceful way. The team that's oriented towards customer service is really, you can't fake it. Like, people who really love their customers, who really are passionate about customer success, it comes out. And in terms of background, it could be computer science background, but also we take folks with a wide variety of roles for sales and marketing and others. It's much more about a high integrity, a passion for the space, and this passion for customer success.
You made reference to sort of the trying to create a workforce that's gonna be steady, that you're gonna hire people and you're gonna keep people, you're gonna retain people. One of the things that I read too about CyberArk was that at some difficult points in the global economy that put a lot of stress on a lot of employers and a lot of people were laid off, you made some courageous decisions to keep people on board because you thought that loyalty was an important dynamic. Can you explain that and expound on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think growing up in Israel, you and when you serve in the military, you have this thing where it's all for one and one for all kind of the group, and it's very much entrenched in our culture. And I remember in the financial crisis of 2008, we were here, and I was really surprised. And many in the audience remember, you woke up every morning and there were layoffs after layoffs, and in some cases the articles read as if some of the public companies are even kind of trying to look like they went bigger than the others in the amount of layoffs. Like that was kind of a measure of success. And I looked at it and I said, wait, the employees are the biggest asset we have, and it's my job as CEO to protect them. And culturally, that was the approach. Financially, the way we ran the company was also, I would say, was already lean and mean, and to begin with. We were never, again, kind of East Coast style, which I compare kind of East Coast to West Coast. We weren't overspending. We weren't. We were not all about TV commercials. We were, I would say, financially sound, and it allowed us to not follow the herd. The herd at the time, especially in the startup world, were major layoffs because it was considered to be a nuclear winter. Nobody knows what the prices will look like. And we did this assessment that cybersecurity is thriving because it's not a nice to have, and even some of the organizations that were going through hard times, they still need that security. B, we were lean and mean, and it's much better for us to cut down on executive salaries than to touch a single employee, and that's what we did in 2008. We actually didn't publicize it at the time, but rumor had it, and I think the employees kind of heard over the years that in tough times the management chose to preserve the team, and it ended up being a smart company decision because we came out strong from the crisis. So it was the right thing from every aspect.
From the financial crisis of 2008 to the pandemic of 2020 and the year that feels like a decade, and I'm curious from a cybersecurity perspective, from an information security perspective, has the pandemic changed the kind of threat vectors that you're seeing out there and that are affecting the way you operate?
Yeah, I'll try to give a brief one, but this is it's a big topic in the cybersecurity industry. I would say maybe two dimensions. The positive dimension that's going to be here to stay for all of us is we often talk about Digital transformation that it would have taken companies maybe 5 years happened in 5 months. I have friends and colleagues and customers who they had employees, no one had a computer. They could never work from home. They had fixed, static, heavy computers in the office, and suddenly they are they could be a pharmaceutical company or they can be an insurance company, and they're sent home. And so things that maybe they would have enabled over 5 years, suddenly they had to quickly enable and enable this work from home. And of course, their customers are consuming things digitally, and so they had to improve and create, I would say, applications for their customers. And again, whether you're an app for insurance or for ordering food or everything. So this transformation dramatically accelerated. And it almost happened in a perfect storm because it happened everywhere across the world. So you didn't have a place in the world that's still behind. Even our customers in Asia who were not overly comfortable to have Zoom meetings, and they really preferred meetings in person, are now having Zoom meetings because it's the new reality. So that's a positive. And of course, the cybersecurity. The more the world is digital, the more there's things to secure and to enable that digital transformation, to enable those customers to adopt cloud technologies, to enable them to get the good side of digital transformation. In parallel, for the attacker, the attacker dimension, this work from home and everybody scrambling is like Christmas came early or Hanukkah came early, because you have when people are scrambling, there's loopholes, there's things left behind, there's open networks. You can and so the amount of ransomware attacks have really escalated in the last couple of months. We've been called on, even though we're not an incident response company, but we help to minimize damage and also recover when it comes to privileged access. And we've been called on many organizations that have had severe ransomware attacks in this disruption period. So I think in the long term, humanity will, from that perspective, will benefit. In the short term, there's the hackers, I would say, leverage it for a while.
I want to remind folks that if they've got questions, some great comments in the chat as well. But if you've got specific questions that you'd like to put to Udi, be sure to share them, and I'll be able to curate them and get them into Udi in the few minutes that we have left. Udi, so talk to us a little bit about the cybersecurity industry in Israel writ large. Where is it headed, and how do you see CyberArk's position within it?
I think when we grew up in Israel, I'm sure Avi and Ambassador Miron will agree, oranges was the #1 export industry. And I do miss some of that because you had that good smell of orange groves all around the country. High tech in general is definitely the mega export engine out of Israel, and again, I'll use the flywheel. You have an ecosystem that really feeds itself. Cybersecurity is part of that. Is a massive growing engine. I'm proud to say that like I said, that CyberArk is the second largest in Israel, but there are a lot of startups there. And it's almost like there's a perfect combination that has been analyzed in many places, and it has to do with, of course, the startup mentality that is not just cyber related, but this entrepreneurial mentality. This little bit of a heads up you get if you served in the technology unit in the military, and so you can be very young and already with a very unique skill, and it's usually very applied type of computer science or an applied skill. So you already know how to build something or take apart something coming out of those units. You have the academy, which is also in Israel trying to take part and doing more and more in cybersecurity, and of course the whole ecosystem of large companies and startups, and maybe I would say some government endorsement also the space in combination. So it created this this perfect ecosystem where it could be CyberArk. People who graduated from CyberArk can then start something, and they'll recruit somebody who came from a technology unit, and they'll be some of their first employees, and there's much more of a roadmap of how to do this, because of companies like us that showed that, hey, you can expand to New England, and you hire locally, and you build management teams that are diverse, which is something I'm very proud of. It's not an Israeli company anymore. It's like a global and very diverse management team, and so they have more things to latch on. There are more partners that they can attach to, and so it's easier to start now because there's a full ecosystem, and the cybersecurity industry is really well respected by customers here in Europe and around the world. So it's become a good brand to have if you're a cybersecurity startup out of Israel.
We've got a couple of questions that have come in here. One from Neil asks about the mergers and acquisition in cyber security in that entire industry, and whether or not do you see that there will be larger players in the sector over the next 5 years and a lot of consolidation?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because when you asked about COVID, I also wanted to mention that while we were also regrouping and everybody working from home, CyberArk as a public company, we've made acquisitions, and so we push hard on our own innovation. But given that the attackers are innovating, and given that the infrastructure is continuously changing, especially with cloud, you also need to save time by acquisition. So we made 6 acquisitions to date, but one of them was in the heart of COVID. We announced it in May, and we actually had to do some of the diligence meetings over Zoom with the California company that we acquired called Idaptive, which expanded us to really the broad identity management space, or identity security. So our own example answers the question of in this space, you need to be highly innovative. Your customers expect you to do that. And they're happy if you innovate on your own, or I would say, and then in certain cases you go and you buy other companies. I think if we fast forward a couple of years, we definitely will continue to have large players, but there'll always be room for the startups, because the startups are the ones that can take a space. There's even a startup that's focused. There's startups now that are focusing on medical devices and how do we secure them. And it's a new and emerging space, and nobody thought it was a problem, but now it is. Now people think about, hey, you can actually hack a medical device, and so you needed the startups to go and experiment with that, see if there's a market, and they either grow or they get acquired. And similarly, other areas like and automobiles, like the comment that exactly you didn't have really internet enabled or digital cars before. Now you do. So it's not going to be a large company may experiment with that, but it's actually the ideal scenario is startup went after the space and is proving it right, and either it grows to be an independent large company or it gets acquired.
So we've got a question from Tara, and it's actually a question that occurred to me as I was watching the news last night. There is recently reported a cyber attack against FireEye, which is another big cybersecurity firm, which seems to be, at least in initial attributions, possibly a state-backed attack on FireEye. The question that Tara asks fundamentally, though, is if we see politically motivated and state-sponsored attacks against private sector security providers, how can we as consumers ever feel like there is such a thing as cybersecurity, even if we're buying it from big reputable firms?
Yeah. So I think we should definitely. That's why this space is so dynamic, because when you look at hackers, you have hackers for profit. You have the kind of drive-by hackers, but you also have nation states that are motivated by other means, and they want to hack other governments. And the most famous one we had here is the RSA was breached several years ago, and that was a similar intent. They were going after elements that would allow them to it was a nation state trying to hack into large defense organizations. So I think it's for the consumer perspective, you should expect that continued innovation and what I call productive paranoia, that the security companies themselves have to constantly invest in information security technologies and multiple layers, so that they kind of assume that they can be a target. And I think just like a bank is critical infrastructure and has to really invest in cybersecurity, or a stock exchange is critical infrastructure, us as providers and the large information security companies, we're critical, and we have to continuously invest in that and make sure that we can quickly defend against those attacks, and definitely use our own technologies complemented with others. And I think that's this case definitely sheds the light of how dynamic it is. But it's not okay, let's give up, because they're very sophisticated. That's not a solution. You won't keep the front door open just because there was successful crime. Or semi-successful crime, hopefully in this case. You actually, all right, it actually raises the level of paranoia. It does call for some government-to-government help as well. I think when it comes to the nation states, it's also important for governments to try to put weight on what's allowed and what's not allowed between governments. But in the meantime, the private sector is really working hard to stay ahead, to collaborate, and also be very transparent.
Udi, I feel like we've just only scratched the surface with you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have been a part of this, and thank you for being such a great partner in this conversation.